Episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. We have GTX 1660s, GTC and GDC happenings, Alienware's Aurora, super fast SSDs, and more next. How you doing? Welcome back to another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. And we are stressing right now. We're flat out busy, but we're not going to whine too much in this show. We're going to try and entertain you for the better part of an hour anyways. I'm Dave Altavilla, and with me today, as always, are a couple of geeks. I'm usually the half geek, partial lobotomy kind of thing. I have Marco Chiappetta and Chris Getting. Guys, how you doing today? Marco, how's it going over there in Connecticut? Are you treading water or sinking? You a man drowning or what? What's up?
I'm treading water. Things are okay. It's a little chilly here in Connecticut. Mother Nature seems to be confused about what season it is, but can't complain. Things are good.
Excellent, Smithers and Chris. Can you complain? We won't care, but you could complain if you wanted to.
I was just going to say, it's times like this that should make you happy to not be sharing an office with me, because I'm recovering from a lovely cold. So if I hack, cough, and etc. here, I'm sorry.
The benefits of the benefits of virtual work. You don't have to share each other's plague. That's excellent. Not picking up any germs over the mic. That's good. That's good. So, what's new and exciting, guys? Anything? We have lots to talk about, lots to run down in the news and the headlines and the reviews. But anything new and exciting in your lives that we should tell the folks out there? Are you secretly billionaires by chance?
That'd be nice.
I wish. I don't know if I'd be on the podcast if I was secretly a billionaire.
Oh, really? Oh, it's that kind of thing, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there'd probably be some strippers feeding me grapes on some yacht somewhere if I was a billionaire.
Excellent. All right. Well, you wouldn't be slumming with us, but yeah. Well, anyways, with that in mind, hey Chris, what are you imbibing tonight? I've got a Santilli American India Pale Ale. See that right there?
My cold says water.
Water. Okay, rehydrate. And I know Marco's drinking water. Marco, you're looking a little grainy. I don't know if we can clean up your feet a little bit by the end of the podcast, but yeah.
It's a little scrambled.
It's okay. I don't know.
It's an improvement.
But that's all right. We'll hopefully clean up the stream here shortly. Let's dive right in. And talk about NVIDIA's GeForce GTX 1660. Marco did a review. Smooth 1080p gaming for less. How much less? And is it really that schmoove, Marco?
It's significantly less, and it is pretty smooth. So a few weeks ago, we had this 1660 Ti launch. This is the 1660 Sans Ti. Based on the same TU 116 GPU, but what NVIDIA has done with this guy is basically slash off two SMs, two streaming multiprocessors are gone, so there's fewer CUDA cores enabled. There's 1,408 active CUDA cores versus 1,536 in the 1660 Ti. And these cards, they have the same 192-bit memory interface, but they're using slower clocked GDDR5, not GDDR6. So you end up with about a $220 card, $219 for like entry-level ones that aren't crazy overclocks. There are more expensive models with higher overclocks and lighting, bigger coolers and stuff like that. But I took a look at two of the cards, one from EVGA, one from Gigabyte. The Gigabyte one is still in my test rig. I forgot to pull it out, but this is what the EVGA card looks like in my super grainy, crappy video that you won't be able to see. But essentially, it looks just like the 2060 and 1660 Ti we've showed you over the last few weeks. It actually looks identical. All three cards look the same except for their branding. Really, an interesting GPU. So for $220, it's an absolutely fantastic card for 1080p gaming. You can get by at 1440p. You might have to crank down some settings if you want to hit that 60 frames per second mark in some of the more taxing games. But what you end up with this guy is a $220 card that really competes well with the Radeon RX 590, and in some instances it can creep up on faster cards like a 1070 depending on the title. So yeah, clearly faster than a GTX 1060, in the same ballpark or a few percentage point faster than the RX 590, where it's competitive. But in some instances where the Turing architecture just does particularly well, like VR, for example, you can hang with faster cards like a 1070 for only $220. So seems like a winner here.
Nice. Yeah, GDDR5. I mean, are you losing that much in terms of the memory bandwidth when you're talking about? I mean, really, this thing is 1080p. How about in situations where you've got like AA turned up and you are tapping on the memory a little bit? Are you going to feel it there, or is there that much of a difference between GDDR5 and GDDR6?
Well, in this implementation, you definitely feel it because you're looking at a 8 gigabits per second effective data rate on this guy versus 12 gigabit per second effective data rate. So that translates to 192 gigs per second on the 1660 or 288 gigabytes per second on the 1660 Ti. So like it's a significant memory bandwidth difference, which does, at higher resolutions, the 1660 Ti pulls ahead a little more. But yeah, it's for 1080p, you're okay. If you want to get to those higher resolutions and crank up the details, so that memory bandwidth will likely be a limiter.
Yeah. So you've got two options here. You've got a triple slot jammy from the folks at EVGA and a dual slot. Do you have a preference there? What are the pros and cons of that? And by the way, you cleaned up nicely, looking swank again there, buddy.
Yeah, I didn't do anything, so it's something with my connection. I'm not sure what it could have been. So, if these two cards are very, very similar. They kind of, if you look at the outputs, they're sort of targeting a slightly different audience. The EVGA card has a DVI connector on it and a full-size HDMI. So the EVGA card seems like it might be targeting somebody that's got a 960 class card looking for an affordable upgrade, might have an older monitor with a DVI connector on it. Whereas the Gigabyte card, it's all display ports or an HDMI on there. Yes, you can adapt the connectors, obviously, for other monitors too, but slightly different targets there. It's funny, the Gigabyte board, the PCB is actually shorter than the EVGA board. It just looks like a bigger card because the cooler extends off the back rather than being deeper and taking another slot. It's really 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Depends what's going to fit your build.
Yeah. So this is, in some cases, 1070 class performance, right? Close.
Yeah.
Nipping at its heels.
Close. Exactly. It's not quite a 1070, but it's right there.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think about this little fella from NVIDIA?
When you're down in the really sub 300 range, you're looking for every little bit of gain you can get for the price, and I think it is well positioned from that. And if you are on a strict budget, it looks like a great card. I think I'd still want to stretch for the TI version at the very least, just so you can have a little more of the high resolution leg room down the road. But if you're happy with 1080p and you're going to stay there, you might have to turn down a couple settings. Can't quite crank it out, but pretty close to it.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at Shadow of Tomb Raider, 1080p, hitting somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 frames per second on the highest preset. That's pretty good. 70 frames per second there. And then if you move on to things like Strange Brigade, which is a little bit more taxing, right? That's, well, no, I guess not. That's about 80 frames per second in ultra quality. Yeah, not bad. Good bang for the buck. Far Cry dropping in at about 80 frames per second as well. Or higher, actually. Wait a minute. Let me look at that. Yeah, no, 80 frames per second or so. 1080p. Does not support DLSS, does not support ray tracing.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah. Marco, any other advantages? So one of the things we talked about at GTC, GDC, and this will be a a good segue is how ray tracing works and some of the advantages of Turing that exist exclusive of ray tracing cores and DLSS RT cores, tensor cores, excuse me. So dual issue, floating point and integer instructions. You do get some benefit from that, right? A little bit in some cases.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk about one thing to keep in mind with ray tracing. No RTX support, so no DLSS, no RTX, but DXR technically will run on any DX12 class GPU. And what the news that came out, one of the pieces of news that came out of GTC was that with an April driver update, ray tracing is going to be enabled on non-RTX cards. So Pascal and Turing non-RTX capable GPUs are going to get DXR support. Now, of course, performance is going to vary from card to card because they're going to be doing math that those shaders weren't really designed to do, whereas RTX cards have specific cores for accelerating the workloads associated with ray tracing. But you are going to be able to do it and test it out. It is definitely not going to be in the same class as an RTX card, but another piece of news that came out recently, people saw a demo from Crytek that showed ray tracing on a Radeon RX Vega 56 that looked really good. Not clear on what techniques they're using. It's not going to be exactly the same, obviously, to what NVIDIA is doing. But, this is all, upstart fledgling stuff still playing out. In terms of other advantages to the architecture, being able to do concurrent float and integer will give the Turing GPU architecture advantages over Pascal and potentially over Radeons. Again, we're not sure because we haven't seen a Radeon running one of these DXR workloads yet. One disadvantage to this 1660, this isn't part of the ray tracing discussion, but one thing I need to mention with these cards, if you're a tweaker, the models that we looked at don't allow you to tweak the power target, but if you're overclocking, you can still easily break the 2 gigahertz mark. And when overclocking, it's funny, if you look at the overclocking data on the second to last page, while overclocked, the 1660 is really right there with the 1070. It was 1 frame per second behind in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and in 3D Mark Time Spy, the stock 1660s are slower than a 1070. The overclocked cards are faster than a 1070. So it's literally right in that same ballpark.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So, and we'll move on to the next headline that segues with this, John. NVIDIA's Pascal and Turing GeForce GTX GPUs to gain ray tracing support with April driver update. This is an interesting discussion that actually we had with Tom Peterson, TAP of NVIDIA, and we're probably going to have TAP back on for another show. So stay tuned to that, folks. We'll let you know. We'll certainly get the word out when we do. But there was an interesting discussion, and we actually, Marco, I'm not sure if you saw this kind of level of detail, but I know they briefed you as well. So because the 1660 is a Turing-based architecture and can do that concurrent integer and float math, it actually in game engines where they enable ray tracing techniques via shader processing, not ray tracing cores. So in legacy GeForce products or Turing without, the 1660 series, what have you, it actually lifts the performance of a 1660 to higher than 1070, approaching 1080, or maybe even faster than 1080 kind of performance in that situation where you have ray tracing turned on. NVIDIA likes to call it shader processed ray tracing. It's being done in software. There's no dedicated hardware engine. So I thought that was interesting, and it might provide a little bit more value for the 1660, right? Or am I oversimplifying?
Well, yeah. So if Pascal has to do all the integer operations and then do all the floating point operations, whereas Turing can just do them concurrently, obviously it's going to work through the particular workload faster. That's the advantage of Turing. So that's the gist of that whole discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
And looking at current titles we see with ray tracing, whether it's Metro or it's Battlefield 5, it kind of sounds crazy to have, Pascal cards or the 1660 with ray tracing. But again, it's going to be coming to indie games soon, which are going to be a lot less punishing on a GPU and can still take advantage of the technology for great effects, even if it's not pushing, trillions of polygons.
No, and you make a good point, Chris. Actually, when we're out at GDC, I was actually out on the West Coast, and I was at GTC and GDC. And one of the big announcements out there was that Epic's Unreal Engine will support RTX and ray tracing in general. They have a I think it's 4.2 release that has that capability in an update. And the Unity engine. So when you think about Unreal Engine and Unity engine moving forward, that's a huge percentage of the game industry or the game title population that use either of those two engines. They're very popular engines. So it's coming, and those two big names enabling ray tracing techniques. That should get some additional critical mass behind it. So I think, as even AMD's Lisa Su noted, ray tracing is coming, and for everybody involved, not just NVIDIA. So game developers are going to be making use of the tech, which is good.
Everyone loves pretty lighting.
So there's two things to remember. So it was actually Unity and Unreal will support DXR. It's
DXR,
not
right?
native RTX DXR, but to have, you also need a GPU with drivers that have it enabled, right? So the engines absolutely having the support is huge. It should make the pervasiveness of DXR features moving forward way more common. But you also have to have a GPU with software that will allow those features to run. Right now, AMD has not enabled them, but that Crytek demo shows that someone's got a set of drivers that do ray tracing for Vega and Radeon. So it's probably coming at some point too, if NVIDIA is enabling it on Pascal now. Hopefully AMD is working hard to enable that as well.
There you go. That's Marco putting your ass in the know again. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. And let's move on, John. We'll step out of GeForces and talk about some more stuff. NVIDIA. They had their big GPU technology conference in San Jose, adjacent to the San Francisco GDC Game Developers Conference that was going on simultaneously. And they demoed some pretty cool technologies that they're working on. GTC tends to be a little bit bigger iron kind of show. AI and machine learning are big topics out there. It tends to be where folks, obviously, GPU technology conference are where folks gather to discuss developing with GPUs and all sorts of applications. So, certainly graphics and techniques there, but AI, machine learning are two big areas for NVIDIA. And NVIDIA had a demo called Gogan, which is an AI machine learning tool for photorealistic images from simple hand doodling. And what you're seeing there, and they showed this real time. I don't know if we can scroll down the page if there's a video on there or not, John. But yeah, we don't have a video on. Oh, we do have video on there. So yeah, I don't know if we can roll that video, but it's pretty cool. Basically, you see guys with some tools. This library of tools looks a little bit like a simplified Photoshop, and they're literally sketching simple lines on the screen and shapes. And so here's a mountain, here's a river, here's a skyline, and then we're going to draw a tree, and it's just simple lines. And then all of the AI through inferencing, through having previously digested something that looks like, there you go, a cliff next to the water, a rocky cliff next to the water, or some rocks in the water along the water's edge, or a field. The AI goes in and paints that scene based on these predefined images that it's already learned. So, guy clicks snow, and bang, snow drops into the landscape based on the line he just drew. And so I'm oversimplifying things, but it's pretty fascinating tech when an AI can literally, render something that looks photorealistic from something as simple as, okay, here's here's like 3 lines with the 3 different shades of color drawn in the studio. It's fascinating stuff. I don't know, Marco, what were your thoughts with this thing? And did you get a kick out of it like I did? Because watching it on stage was cool.
I thought it was really cool. So, and just to really be clear and understand what it's doing, this isn't just compositing photos that are in a database.
Right.
The AI, digested all, many thousands of images and is creating that stuff on the fly based on the doodle. I thought it was really cool, and I could see it, really opening up the possibilities for game designers or artists that, they don't want to spend a ton of time doing terrain or something simple or coming up with some sort of landscape, and they can just do a quick doodle and bang, have something that might fit for a particular scene without using a ton of resources. I think is really cool.
Yeah. No, that you make a good point. You basically drew this scene and then click these different composites, if you will, snow, not composites, but click these different natural effects, snow, mountains, stream, tree, and apply it to this line. And the AI decides, okay, here's what it's going to look like based on what I've learned. So yeah, kind of cool stuff. Chris, is the AI gonna take your job? I know you're a pro photographer and videographer on the side. You worried about losing your job to the machine?
It's probably a better landscape photographer than I am. I'll give it that. But it really reminds me of that project that was used with Google Maps when they had the street view, and then it would use, I think it was AI that they were using to automatically snippet out parts of the street view and turn them into photo compositions. So it's interesting to see just how much image processing you can get out of AI in different workloads. And it's going to make for an interesting future where nothing is real.
John Sugar makes a good point, and this is actually something that will provide some flexibility in the future for folks as well. He says the tech will be useful in the EU regarding Article 13. You can create some artwork that isn't copyrighted for use in your content, and I think copyright issues are a global thing. And now you can create something that's looks totally natural and you're not ripping somebody else off, maybe.
But who owns the artwork?
Yeah, until the lawyers figure out how to sue everybody because an image was in a database and 3 pixels were based on a copyrighted image.
Yeah. Let the scumbag lawyers figure out how to work that angle, right?
And they're already claiming videos of blank screens on YouTube. So.
Good stuff. And so lots more going on at the show. NVIDIA showed off some new data science workstations. I'll go ahead and hit that now. So NVIDIA Quadro RTX Turing HPC data science workstations coming from HP, Lenovo, and Dell. And basically what this is it's a platform that NVIDIA has set forth I don't want to say it's really a reference design where OEMs are going to build these data science workstations. And I would also say not only for data science, but I think real high-end ProViz applications and content creation applications as well. But this is basically a new enablement and sort of reference design that NVIDIA is putting forth with OEMs, and really, sort of taking it to market on, best practice and how to implement a design with dual GeForce RTX. Let's see, Quadro 6000s. Are they Quadros? Yeah. Quadro RTX 6000 and 8000s. So these are big, powerful ProViz cards. And, they also rolled out some APIs to go with it, some software packaging to go with it called CUDA-X, CUDA-X AI. So now you can do, so now you have these tools on board bundled in, qualified, certified to work and support lots of different AI algorithms and machine learning tasks. Interesting stuff. I think it makes sense for NVIDIA to go to market with this and sort of drive sort of industry standard around their stuff and from a hardware standpoint, how to standardize design and then certification as well. It makes sense. This kind of high-end hardware requires that level of reliability and certification. So I don't know, Marco, if you had any quick thoughts on that. I just figured I'd throw that out there and mention it. There was some other cool stuff on the Jetson side of the house as well.
Yeah, those desktops, or they also had servers powered with RTX GPUs in, but those systems with the multiple RTX GPUs inside, they're a great solution for a data scientist or somebody in between, where you maybe don't have the budget or the funds or access to some big iron HPC, DGX type powerful servers, but you want to be in that space doing some big data analysis, big data analytics, things like that. So it's absolutely, agree with you. Makes perfect sense that NVIDIA comes out with something like this. Obviously, the RTX GPUs, they're most powerful in the lineup. So yeah, match made in heaven right there.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Have to see what comes of that and how successful they are. It's good that I think NVIDIA rolls out with partners, HP, Lenovo, and Dell, and those are sort of the big three there, certainly in workstations. But there was also some cool stuff on the mini side of the house. NVIDIA's Jetson Nano, a Raspberry Pi style dev kit for AI research and the DIY crowd. And what you're looking at there is Jetson Nano. There's the module there. Looks like a little, well, it's a mezzanine style card, sort of socketable in a mezzanine, right angle socket on the board. And it's pretty cool. It's a modular approach where, the card plugs into the socket. There you go. You bring out your IO. You've got USB. You've got HDMI. You've got GigE all right there. Passive heatsink. It is based on Tegra TX1. So basically, this is it's a DIY Tegra TX1 based mini computer for lots of different applications, and they bring out all the ports right there. And supports 4K 30 video on the let's see, capable of 4K 30 encode and 4K 60 decode. And so it's a pretty powerful little machine that you could envision doing lots of things with. I'm trying to think, but certainly you can boot up lots of different Linux distros on this thing. But I don't know if you guys, if you took interest in this, if you had any crazy ideas for anywhere from, I think there's a $99 kit. But I think you can pre-order for $129 right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't really see the specs weren't listed when I was checking that out. So it's Tegra TX1 you said on there?
Correct. Yeah, it's not 2. It's TX1. Yeah,
TX1. Yeah. So that's another one of those. Those basically single board. It's not a single board PC, but those super low power single board devices where you now have access to NVIDIA's APIs in a really affordable little sort of dev kit. Those are the kind of things where the use case or the killer app hasn't been invented yet. That's why these things are out there, so the devs can play with them, figure out some sort of cool use case, and it's going to show up somewhere on a device on a wall and be able to detect heart attacks or some stuff like that.
Detect heart attacks. There you go.
It will be something like, because that's the whole hook. Like it's to leverage AI and machine learning and all that good stuff. So it will be along those lines where it's able to detect or find something in a massive data.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing for sure. So it's a CPU. It's a quad core processor, ARM A57 cores, 4 gig of RAM, 16 gig of eMMC flash storage, and it has 128 Maxwell CUDA cores on board. So it's previous gen. It's not Pascal. It's not certainly not Turing, but it's Maxwell, and very capable. From a single board computer standpoint, for sure. A lot more expensive than a Raspberry Pi, which you can get for what, like $40, $50 these days.
It depends on the model. You can get it for like $5,
right, or less, right? Yeah, but a lot more powerful too. So, Chris, are you envisioning creating some things with this bad boy?
I'm not sure I could quite leverage it, but there's definitely a lot of potential to be had there. I do think it's interesting that they haven't switched it to USB-C for power. I think you get a lot of versatility off of that, but maybe a future generation's probably going that way. Maybe they're just trying to keep costs that low.
I'm trying to think how pervasive USB-C was back in the Tegra TX1 days. I'm not sure it was that pervasive back then, and so that may be why they may not have the interface available in there. But no, cool stuff. So that's the Jetson Nano. And that was kind of it. There was a lot going on out there at the show, with certainly the whole NVIDIA ecosystem and all their partners. But over at GDC, a few towns over in San Francisco, there was a lot going on as well. You have game devs out there. A lot of the the different game companies were there. Whether it be game devs or hardware, gaming companies as well. And the folks at Intel actually set up shop and decided to do a little bit of, razzle dazzle and buzz, if you will, to sort of at least let the crowd know that they're working on this thing and pull them in. Intel shows what its discrete XE graphics cards look like, and the crowd goes wild. So we actually did a little story on this. I was there at the event. Chris Hook and Raja Kaduri from Intel now stepped out to show the crowd what a possible graphics card could look like from Intel. And there was actually an artist that did these renderings that they approved of, and set forth with the Intel logo and the branding on it, the XE branding. Cristiano Siqueira is his name, and he did these renders. You've got two cards here. You've got a short card, what looks to be a dual slot card with a single squirrel cage fan. No indication whether or not there's supplemental power there, but it's a standard by 16 card, by 16 PCI Express card. And that's the short guy. It seems to be an entry-level kind of card or a more mainstream card. And then there's the high-end card, which is longer, and it looks like an Optane drive with lighting on steroids. If you scroll down a little bit, Sean. And so that guy's got PCI Express by 8, or excuse me, 8-pin PCI Express, not by 8, 8-pin PCI Express power connector and a 6-pin PCI Express power connector in the back end, with a single turbine fan as well. Thoughts there? I mean, the folks in Intel are just sort of waving the flag, I think, more than anything. Chris Hook, formerly of AMD, now at Intel, heading up the graphics, visual computing marketing effort, knows how to really lather a crowd up. I don't know what you thought about all that, Marco. I thought it was interesting, and I think they're making a point to say, hey, we're coming, and we want everybody along with us on this thing called Intel's Odyssey. Join the Odyssey. That's what they were saying.
Yeah, totally. As cool as the designs are, I think that the renders looked really cool. Strictly a brilliant marketing move to get people sort of continually talking about Intel entering graphics and making people feel like they're somehow involved in the process as these GPUs get developed and come to market over this year and into next year. So yeah, there's really no indication that those renders anything resembling those will ever hit the market, but testing the waters in terms of design and considering that, what Optane looks like, it's likely that a GPU will follow a similar design language, at least a GPU designed for the enthusiast space. Like the 905P has those. I forget what. There's a name to that design language, but with that angular design with the lighting. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna look it up. No, I'm gonna
Okay.
look it up. It's a dragon scale. Scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very likely that a consumer enthusiast GPU is going to follow a similar design language. So there's some cohesive look for all the products. But yeah, it's Intel is really making some smart marketing moves here, and we have a couple of things from John Sugar before we forget. Going back to the previous discussion, he asked if didn't NVIDIA release creators drivers recently? Yes, and that's interesting. They are sort of a tweener driver between the pro and the consumer drivers, which are a big deal. If you look at my Quadro RTX review, you'll see how a 2080 Ti craters in some spec viewperf tests where a Titan RTX does not. Even though they're basically the same GPU, just different software. So yes, they did release creator drivers that will help guys using content creation apps. And then he was also talking about the Intel GPUs that we're discussing now. It's basically a render of a type of cooler, no indication of actual GPU tech. And that's exactly right. It's like, strictly to get people to feel like they're involved and to test the waters to see what people think of the design.
Yeah, I thought it was a good move as well, and I think they did get some feedback. People immediately latch onto the fan design. They latch onto the lighting and the design signature of the. I'm blanking on it again. Dragon scale. Man, I got to get that to stick. Chris, any thoughts on that? Did you think it was? What was it fitting for Intel to whoop it up, or was it kind of like just pomp and circumstance to you? Like, what were your thoughts?
From a marketing standpoint from Intel, yeah, they have to make a presence that, yes, we're going to be building graphics so that when it comes in 2020, 2021, whenever it actually hits the market, people aren't going, what is this? There's already that kind of, oh yeah, Intel graphics, it's a thing going on beyond just the integrated on CPU thing that nobody really takes seriously from a gaming standpoint. As far as the design goes, it's just that. I mean, they want it to look good. I feel like this looks very F-Zero inspired, like it's just a piece of the F-Zero track pulled up, boost pads or something. I like it. So, it's all good, but it is a render. So, a great looking design is a start, but it doesn't mean anything until there's great performance behind it, or at least a great value ratio of performance to price behind it. So, it obviously makes us eager to see what it's going to look like when it's finally here, but it's not here yet.
I need to ask something, and Marco, maybe you can help. And I don't know, Chris, maybe you know the answer to this, but we're saying XE, and it's actually, we have it lowercase in the headline. It's actually superscript. X to the E, right? Mm-hmm. How do we say this? How do we say this branding? Marco, you got a clue?
I've heard everyone just saying XE.
XE.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a little weird. It's a little weird. Like, I want to know because it's X to the E, right?
It's X to the E power. You sound like a rapper. Right? It's X to the E.
All right, don't make fun of me. But no, yeah, like literally X to the E power. Like, so yeah, there must be there needs to be an official way of saying this.
And the other part is if this does come to market, there's probably going to be third-party designs, just like we see with NVIDIA and ATI. So they're going to have their own coolers too. So I mean, if you get like a Founders Edition equivalent or whatever, yeah, you're going to have this design, but ultimately it may not be that necessary of a design language. We'll see. I mean, they could play it out much stricter than NVIDIA and ATI are, or AMD.
Sure. Marco, do you think they're going to jump out of the gate with some big guns blazing on the GPU front, or are we going to get a more mainstream offering first? What's your gut tell you?
That is a perfect segue to something John just put in the chat. He says his theory is they'll enter the pro science and AI markets first, and not with a game focus card. So I think Intel has told us they're coming after the gaming market, but The scuttlebutt is the first gaming cards are not going after the ultra high end; they're going after the meat of the market in the mainstream space. So I think what you're going to see are, and this is all speculation, you're going to see discrete designs like Kaby Lake G, where you have a CPU core and a GPU, a separate discrete GPU core in a single package for small form factor systems or maybe notebooks. You're going to see a big iron card, because that's where all the money to be made is going to land in servers for, you know, AI deep learning workloads, and you will see a mainstream GPU as well for the gaming market out of the gate.
That's your projection.
That's my guess. That's my guess. You
Cool.
can't be showing all these cards and having events like Odyssey event you were just at and showing renders of a physical separate add-in card discrete GPU and then not launch it. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I wonder if they're going to hit the big iron though. I wonder, because I would offer that there's opposing forces there. So when you think about what Intel has to offer for AI in the data center, now GPU obviously is a key technology that is enabled now in the data center for AI machine learning. NVIDIA is mopping it up with GPUs there, and their CUDA platform software that goes with it. So, but if you look at what Intel has to offer for AI and data center, they have the other side of the house, which is either programmable FPGA, programmable logic coupled with CPUs, their Altera acquisition, for configurable processor technologies. And they have Nirvana, which are purpose-built ASICs that these guys, you know, that founded it. I actually spent some time talking to them that week. They actually founded Nirvana, a bunch of, you know, college guys that were working in AI and machine learning on CUDA, on NVIDIA's tools, and decided we're going to build an ASIC that's more efficient than the GPU. And they're not going to run, they're going to have their own software stack, obviously. But Intel, and I actually saw the GPU, not the GPU, the ASIC, the Nirvana ASIC with, I think it was 32 gigs of HBM2 strapped on either side. Looked just like a, you know, an NVIDIA Tesla, you know. So interesting stuff. I think there's opposing forces there though, and I don't know how Intel's going to go in the data center with GPUs, if they're going to go there at all. They may go with their other product line, Marco. I don't know.
No, they will, because everything is each one of the, so I have to be careful what I say too, because there's stuff that was just talked about at a recent event. But there are chips that are better suited for particular workloads. CPUs are good at one thing, FPGAs are good at one thing, really wide fat GPUs are good at something else.
You're right.
If you have them all, then you are one-stop solution, and that's what Intel doesn't have right now. I mean, NVIDIA doesn't have it either. AMD really is the only company that can offer a CPU and GPU solution, but they're still trying to claw their way into the data center, whereas Intel and NVIDIA are just kind of dominating right now. So, you know, I think Intel wants to be that one-stop shop for every workload. So, I think they're going after all of it.
Yeah, it's a sound strategy. Good point. I like that. Chris, would you concur?
Yeah, I mean, it pays to be everywhere, because, I mean, GPUs are great general purpose devices. They're good at a lot of things, but there's always going to be a place for ASICs that can do one thing really freaking well. And obviously having that CPU groundwork already is just a huge advantage for Intel. Yeah. And again, they're not new to the graphics space. They've had integrated graphics for eons. It's just a matter of making graphics into a big product that can deliver high-end performance.
Scale it. Yeah, scale it. So speaking of scaling, let's talk about a little something you looked at now that we got you on the hot seat. The Alienware Aurora R8, a compact RTX gaming powerhouse. There it is. How big is this little fella? Is it as big as a toaster? Is it bigger than a toaster? Are we talking mid-tower? You know,
it's mid-tower size.
Okay,
it's mid-tower. I think it could be built a little bit smaller, but the extra size to it comes from the casing and the styling. So, you know, I don't know that you really want to make it smaller, and it's already pretty compact inside, especially for airflow, but more on that in a bit. So, you know, it's a good size. You're not going to mind having it on your desk by any means. It's not like the Area 51 that is frankly gigantic. So, you know, it's not going to be a problem in a home office. It's not going to be a problem in your business desk. It's not going to be a problem in your living room if you want to game on the TV. You know, it's a good size, and it packs a healthy amount of power. So the new Aurora R8 basically has the Core i9 CPUs, or sorry, the 9th gen Core CPUs, and Turing RTX graphics. So you can get it with the 2070, the 2080, or the 2080 Ti, or dual 2080s. Sorry,
dual 2080s.
Yeah, you can get dual 2080s on it if you like.
Wow.
Though I think I'd rather go with the 2080 Ti myself, just because I feel like single cards have a bit more reliable performance.
Sure.
But you're probably going to get more horsepower out of the dual 2080s. It's going to be preference. It can handle it, so it's up to you. And our unit comes with the 9700K. You can also put a 9900K in it. I'm not exactly sure if I would. Thermals, like hinted at, are a little tight on this. We had one commenter say he has the 9900K in his rig, and it's not quite able to keep it cool. I'm not sure if he's overclocking or not. It could be a limitation there. But if you're looking for a system that you can just put on your desk and go, Alienware does a good job of that. So, you know, anyone can get this system up and running. Anyone can get it overclocked. Anyone can get gaming with it. It's fantastic for that. So as far as when we were going through it, obviously the big attraction is that it has the RTX graphics now. So digging into the ray tracing side of things, we wanted to see how it compared to, say, a stock 2080. And it does look like, whether it's the thermals or just that it's the CPU is not as beefy as our test rig system, it does come in a little bit behind at stock speeds compared to our reference 2080, which again is backed by a Core i9 9980XE crazy CPU. So, you know, that's not too surprising, but if, you know, with a one-click overclock, you're beating it. So you don't have to fiddle with a ton of stuff. You can just unlock the power and get going. It's great. And again, with the thermals, with our configuration, thermals really aren't an issue. It does get a little noisier than I would like, and I think a lot of high-end gaming systems would go. I think Dell has some less good bearings in their fans, and the pump itself is a little loud. So there is improvement that could be made there. If you swap out the fans for something like Corsair's Maglev fans or Noctua's or some other high-end fan, then I don't think that the acoustics are going to be an issue. It sucks to have to pay more on top of an already premium price machine. But I don't think it's going to be a showstopper. If you game with headphones, you're not going to care anyways. You might hear the hum a little bit, but I don't think it's going to interfere. But anyways, back to the ray tracing side of things. You know, with this system as configured, you're solid for at least with Battlefield 5, one of the two ray trace game titles out there right now. You can put it on 1080p, enable everything, and just go, and you're going to hit 60 FPS and be happy with it. If you want to go up to 1440p, you can still do that. At 1440p, you're going to have access to DLSS, which isn't available at 1080p. So that's going to keep you above 60 frames per second for the most part, and you're not going to have too much of an issue there. Going up to 4K though, you're probably not going to want to have it on ultra quality and DXR enabled, because that's going to bring the frames down to as low as 25, 30 FPS on average. DLSS will bring it back up a bit to the mid 40s. But if you want to keep above that 60 at 4K, you're really going to need DXR off, or opt for the 2080 Ti or the dual 2080 setup. So there is a lot of power here. It's a good system.
Let's talk about the design. So it's interesting to me. I didn't realize that this thing's got an 850 watt power supply. So you can do dual GPUs in that thing, and then look at the efficiency of space in that.
Oh yeah.
So the 850 watt PSU swings out. It's vents out the back. I think cool air comes in the front, goes out the back. You have also a northward facing exhaust fan as well. I mean, this thing actually, it makes an impressive use of space to get a whole heck of a lot of horsepower. I didn't realize 850 watt PSU. So
yeah, so there's kind of three chambers to the design. There's the upper CPU motherboard chamber, there's the lower GPU chamber, and then there's the power supply itself, where it draws air in the side and out the back. The front air intake is in the bottom and goes to the GPU and out the back. The CPU, as far as I can tell, is actually pulling in air from the rear. There's a small little vent next to the I/O panel on the motherboard, and that's really all it has for intake. And then it is exhausting out the top through the radiator, which is a single fan, 120 mil, but it's a pretty thick radiator. So again, with the 9700K, not too much of an issue. If you want to push a 9900K in there, that's gonna have a lot more thermals to dissipate, and it depending on how you're using it, it could struggle with that.
So but $3,000 as configured and tested though.
Yeah, so that's a bit steep. I know you can DIY a system without really cutting corners for 2400. And if you start cutting corners, obviously you can go down from there, but I wouldn't advise it with these kind of components in there. And then, if you want to add your own bling back in, or if you want to pick up the very nice monitor they sent with it, the UltraSharp 3219Q, 32-inch 4K USB-C connected panel, which is 850 on its own. There's other ways you could spend your money, but again, not everyone wants to DIY. Not everyone wants to, hassle around with overclocking themselves. They want to set it, forget it, get working. This is a great system for creative professionals. If you're into a lot of video editing, photo editing, modeling, whatever it could be that uses that horsepower, and you need to work, and you need it to work, and you need a warranty you can depend on, and everything else, it's tough to beat.
Yeah, no, it's a good system. So yeah, I'm just looking at looks like entry level is $1999 with a 9700K, and let's see. So yeah, an RTX 2070 OC, so slightly overclocked RTX 2070, 8 gig card, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 128 gig M2 SSD, M2 SATA SSD. I would spend the $80. Go to the 256 gig M2 PCI Express NVMe SSD, and now you're at $2,079 entry level with a 256 gig NVMe SSD.
And I would probably bring your own data drives and get them as 2.5-inch drives, because the other thing I didn't like about this was where the 3.5-inch drive is, the SATA power connector on it.
On the bottom,
it gets ripped right out when you swing out the PSU. And if you're in and out of the system a lot, it's probably eventually going to break unless you're disconnecting it each time. So it's a little bit of hassle. That was kind of a disappointing thing about the system. But you bring your own, you can get 2 terabyte solid state drives, just SATA drives, pop them in the bottom, and you're off to the races.
Yeah. No, it's neat and clean. That's what I like about it. It's very efficient from a space and size standpoint. And you get the empty 2.5-inch bays on the bottom for bulk storage. Get a PCI Express NVMe SSD as your boot drive, and you're off to the races. Marco, is this your kind of jam, or do you like more full figured?
I love that machine. I think the styling could use an update because it's been around, I think, what, like 4 years, that particular style of chassis. But I
2016.
love those compact, powerful machines. I really dig the Aurora R8.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, so let's move on, and we'll wrap up pretty quick, and talk about a drive that you might actually config in an Aurora, or upgrade in an Aurora. The AData XPG SX 8200 Pro SSD marker. You took a look at that. Strong performance, aggressive price. This thing pushes 3.5 gigs a second, 3 gigs right, and it's cheap. It's pretty high end, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's really, so it's not super cheap. It's not one of the cheapest NVMe SSDs you can get, but this is a really nice drive for the money. So we looked at the original XPG 8200 last year. This drive is very similar. It's, if you were to quickly look at the controller, you might think it's the same. The original was based on the Silicon Motion SM2262. This one's the 2262EN. It's a slightly updated controller with faster internal pathways. And AData also tweaked the firmware, and the drive's got Micron's latest 64-layer NAND flash on here. So all told, what you end up with is a drive with super fast sequential reads, 3.5 gigs a second, right up there with some of Samsung's fastest drives. The writes, they're not quite as fast as, say, a Samsung 970 EVO, but you can exceed the 2 gig per second mark. I think their spec says, I forget, it says 3 gigs a second. Yeah, you can get there with Atto, but like if you look at something like Crystal Disk Mark, it's just over the 2 gig mark, and whereas Samsung is significantly higher there. In terms of IOPS, it's right in the middle. You know what? I shouldn't say it's in the middle. It trails the Samsung drives, but it beat everything else that we tested. And I tested a wide range of drives, but it's, again, Samsung has that lead at the very high end. And latency is right there with the Samsung drives. So overall, really strong SSD. The higher end capacities, only about 17 cents a gigabyte, which is like 56% lower than a 970 EVO.
Yeah.
So not the super cheapest NVMe SSD, but if it's really like a no compromise drive, right? Not everybody's doing big giant sequential writes. So strong 4K performance, good latency, really fast reads, and an affordable price. It's just a nice all around SSD from AData here.
1 terabyte for $183 on Amazon.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous how cheap they've gotten now. It's actually, I mean, it's great, I should say, because it was a while that, you know, NVMe especially was a premium, but $182 for a terabyte drive. Chris, you'd jump all over that, right?
Oh yeah. Love it.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's great that the SSDs these days they're still driving down in price, and the NAND memory market. You can thank the glut of memory we've got going on these days that's driving that pricing down. I'm sure the NAND manufacturers don't appreciate it, Samsung and Micron, but yeah, that's I mean, for $183, a 1 terabyte drive, that's a nice roomy drive to have for your OS and a few other things, and pushing 3.5 gigs a second on the reads. It's going to feel snappy. Probably the best upgrade you can make for your system would be an SSD, right, fellas?
If you're stuck on a hard drive, absolutely switch to an SSD. You're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
Once you go SSD, you never go back.
There you go. Words of wisdom. Yeah. So, and John Sugar says Intel may be positioned to be in the next but one gen console market if what you say is true. So yeah. So he's sort of projecting that Intel may score some console business out of the gig. We'll see with their newfound GPU prowess. I don't know. Could be a good combo, right? I mean, you think about KB Lake G and what that did. Maybe something similar in a console.
I think AMD is pretty entrenched and willing to make custom designs. It's going to be tough to unseat AMD in the console space.
Yeah,
I would not disagree with that assessment. Yes, But interesting observations all around from the audience. Thanks very much, John, for your input. Always good to have you with us, buddy. And that about wraps us up for this week, fellas. We are going to be coming back here in the days ahead, I think, with some special guests. Stay tuned. We may have representatives from NVIDIA and Intel. May. Yeah, I can't really commit to that yet, right, Marco? But we're getting close on a couple.
I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. I think we'll have some interesting discussions soon from both companies.
Yeah. And giveaways too. Who knows? You'll find us on the web at hothardware.com. That's where we are. That's where we hang our shingle out. YouTube.com/hothardware, Twitter.com/hothardware, Facebook. We're everywhere. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe, join us here Wednesdays at 7:00. Usually, most times. We may have to miss a week here and there just due to business travel, but we do like to have you with us. And that's about it, fellas. Any parting words before we sign off into the ether?
Just quick, I want to show off something cool that just landed. I got some crazy high-end Patriot Viper memory here. So it's a 16 gig kit, PC 4200. I'm sorry, 4400 speeds. Really nice. Steel heat spreaders on these. Well, they're not steel heat spreaders. The color is like a nice steel. I'm screwing this up. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. You can tell that I'm tired. So I'm going to pop these into an Intel system and a Ryzen system and see what that 4400 speed does to bandwidth. Should be pretty fun. And we'll get that posted soon.
Patriot Viper RAM. The Vipers.
Yeah, baby.
They're coming. Chris, you got any Vipers over there?
No, I got a review of our show from my little nephew, and he says we do a good job, but he does wish that we covered more Mario content. So something to keep in mind for future shows, I guess.
Thanks for the feedback. We will look into the Mario content. There you go. And with that, folks, we will say thank you very much for stopping by. Join us next week. Take care. I know John wants to hit the road.
Cool.
I'm not gonna incriminate myself like the last episode, though.
All right, guys. I'll talk to you later. I'm gonna go help with bedtime.